watching Torilla Bear. Only on YouTube.
Hello my cubs, welcome back to my channel. I am Torilla Bear, as you may know, and today we're doing something a little different. You guys may know my PC is going to be out of commission, so I'm getting a new one, so I cannot play games like I usually do. For right now, I'm just thinking of talking about certain topics that I've actually been wanting to talk about for quite a while now. Today I want to talk about the Ellie versus Clementine, not only in combat but just in survival, because people are always comparing the two to each other. From my perspective, I really feel like I like them both. I do like Clementine a bit more, but at the same time, I would rather them work together than to fight in the apocalypse, because they're both very strong female protagonists and one of my favorites, including Laura Croft. I have my notes right here, and then we're just gonna get started on it. Clementine from the Walking Dead game versus Ellie from The Last of Us. Both iconic female survivors, but in different ways and in different worlds. Clementine, the thing is, she was thrown into her apocalypse and trained to grow up fast. She did kind of have a life before. I say kind of because living to like 7 years old, you haven't really lived much of life, period. Her not having to deal with that until the age of 8, still quite young. And I think the last game she was 17 or something, 16 or 17 I think she was in the last game. So she spent kind of like 8 years in the apocalypse. But then when it comes to Ellie, she was born into the apocalypse and trained from the start. Let's just start with chapter 1 and just go into the background of each character. So, Clementine, she lives in a world full of slower zombies called walkers, plus humans. Humans have a really big impact in The Walking Dead just because they're probably more of a bigger threat than the zombies. Like, the zombies were bad, albeit, and to have them in such large groups really just made it so Clementine had to move around a lot. But at the same time, humans seemed like they had really more of a bigger impact, because that's who she was fighting the most. That's who caused a threat the most. With a lot of zombies, all you really have to do is just move, whereas with other humans like bandits, you have to really take into account that they steal your materials, like not only just wanting to kill you, but they do many more things than what a zombie would do. A zombie would just kill you. And then with Ellie, she was born after infection, so the apocalypse has already happened. She faces a number of zombies like clickers, runners, bloaters, etc., as well as humans like bandits, etc. So I would say comparatively, Ellie definitely does have the tougher world, but there has been points of time where Clementine, just hasn't had to continuously deal with multiple different things. Usually Clementine's issues are usually having to do with like the group dynamics and the relationships with that, plus walkers here and there. It honestly seems incomparable between the worlds. But yeah, I just think, I don't know, when trying to compare the two worlds, to me it just feels like Ellie's world is just a bit different when it comes to how much they have to struggle. Ellie's world did actually have a lot of safe points and safe areas. So when debating on which background which character had the toughest background. From an outside perspective, it seems like, man, I don't want to deal with either or options. But I would just say, comparatively, just based on the fact that The Last of Us has multiple different types of zombies, I would just say that that world is just a bit harder, even if it's not by a lot. If we were to be like, who would win in a fight, it would definitely be Ellie, just because not only her physical strength, but I feel like she can actually box with clickers and stuff. Like, she can actually throw a punch at zombies, whereas Clementine, I don't think she's ever like thrown a punch. Like, she doesn't do decks like actual punches. She is more so a situational escaper. I feel like she will definitely strategize a way to go around someone or something, like a threat, and kind of like, attack them from behind. It's also very precise when it comes to like shooting and things like that. But when we're talking about on hand-to-hand combat, yeah, it's, if we go into the using the weapon method, if we use the being armed as an argument, then I think Clementine definitely does have a chance, because she knows how to strategize and use her weapons to her advantage, not just because she's trying to kill someone, but she's trying to survive. I feel like Ellie, since she is on edge like constantly all the time, it is really just about protecting herself and not wanting to be killed, where she, to me at least, in my opinion, she doesn't necessarily think through on how she's going to survive a fight.
Whoa. Hey.
You can kind of see it when Ellie and Abby fight. She's kind of just on edge all the time, looking around, and it's fine to be scared in that situation. Who wouldn't be scared? But at the same time, I feel like with Clementine, she just, whenever she has been scared, of course, but whenever there is an enemy that she has to fight, she always just thinks it through on what exactly she's going to be doing.
I'm just gonna take a little bit, then I'm leaving. Like it never happened.
Agent, get down!
You piece of shit!
Something that comes back to me is the fight between her and Lily. I can never remember her name. I hate her. Sorry. But between her and Lily, she actually came up with a solid plan before actually battling it out.
Once we find the boat, we'll look for a way to sneak on board. Well, they've got guards posted on the pier and the boat. There's no way we can take them all at once. Our only hope is to distract them while we sneak on board.
We should burn their stuff.
That'd work. We could burn the supplies or the hay they keep for the horses. The fire will lure the raiders away from the boat, and we can sneak across the pier. You remember that guy I told you about, James? He sent in walkers to save us from Lily and Abel. Maybe we could convince him to do it again. If we lead a big enough group of them onto the beach, we can blend in without being seen.
So when it comes to them both, I think strategically Ellie could put up a good fight, whereas with Ellie, I think Ellie would want to go a bit more hands-on, head-on, whereas Clem would kind of just stick to the stealth route and try to catch Ellie when she's off guard. I think she uses that to her advantage for many different enemies throughout her battles. It's situational. It's a situational thing, basically. Chapter 2 is the skill set. So when dealing with combat and weapons with Ellie, she has tons of experience, tactical hand-to-hand and heavy-handed melee and fists. With Ellie, like what she learns to do and is trained for, she learns a bunch of combat, stealth, weapon crafting. So she has the edge when it comes to, I guess, when it comes to combat and fighting. I'm talking more in a sense of grown up Ellie. I'm talking about, let's be clear here. I'm gonna be talking about their kind of like OP, like where they're at now. The strongest Ellie and the strongest Clementine, I feel like, can go head to head, and we really don't know who could be the winner of that. To Ellie, at least in the last few sequences that we saw of her, when she went to go and get Abby, she definitely does make a change because she doesn't fall into getting revenge, but she still doesn't make a change when it comes to her fighting tactic and actually thinking through and strategizing what she's going to do. So yeah, with Clem though, she learns weapons tactically, then she learns a lot of majority of things. She learns survival, group dynamics, leadership, decision making, and also parenthood. When she, basically has to be a parent at, I don't know how old she was, like 14 or something, had to be a parent to AJ and, just protecting him as well as herself. Based on their skill set, I do think Ellie has a lot more experience when it comes to not only weapons but fighting for longer in general. Ellie also trained in not for the Fireflies. It was either for the Fireflies or something else, but she trained in her younger years for something. So yeah, I feel like Ellie, at least when it comes to combat and stuff, she does have the upper hand. And also, let's say physical strength, because Clementine, I feel, is a lot smaller, also younger than Ellie. So let's say, if they were at the age that they're at the last game, at the last part of the game, then Clementine is definitely way smaller than Ellie. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, but that's my take on it. They're two separate worlds, two different instances of zombie apocalypse, two different situations where you can compare, because again, it's the zombie apocalypse, but at the same time it's kind of hard to compare, and it just seems like one side is on the lighter end, still dealing with a lot of stuff, much of the same stuff, but not as big or as dangerous as the other world. So hopefully that makes sense. Chapter 3, I wanted to see some fan opinions, right? So majority, there's a group 1 and a group 2, a half and half. Basically, this whole argument is split in half. I kid you not. There's a lot of people for Ellie's side, there's a lot of people for Clementine's side. If you're one of the sides, just drop it down below. But for group 1, with Ellie's supporters, right, fans argue that Ellie handles combat better and that she takes advantage of better weapons and training, which is pretty much true because of the enemies that she has to face. Her combat is definitely her advantage, and she definitely handles it better just because of the life that she has to live, and that is a simple fact. So, but with group 2, Clementine supporters, the total opposite side, thinks that Clem has more of a tactical mind plus the experience of being alone. Now, I had to think about it for a second because when I saw that when researching this stuff, I was like, hasn't Ellie been alone before? And she has, you know, when Joel was out of commission. It wasn't time after time again. You know what I mean? With Clementine, she was in a group and the group died. New group dies. New group dies. And then just like alone in between that. A lot of fans also think she'd outmaneuver Ellie when it comes to like strategy rather than strength, which is what I was saying earlier along the lines. I was trying to get it out, but what I was saying earlier was that Clementine, instead of fighting things head on, she's more of a strategic stealth type of person, to where she will catch the enemy off guard rather than fighting head on, and kind of just sneakily goes behind their back and attacks. And I feel like with the right composure and really the right realistic instances, let's say that they only have like, let's say either no weapon or one weapon, which was like a knife, I feel like Clementine could get the upper hand on her if she played it right. Still, this is all according to opinions. Chapter 4, we're going into the fight scenario. So based on some research on the fans' way of thinking and just by how the game goes, this is kind of how each version of both characters would be able to fight each other. Season 4 Clem and Season 2 Ellie, that is their peak. I feel like it could be along the lines of equal if it depends on the situation. Like, it depends on what weapons they use, and it also depends on which world they're fighting in. But yeah, a lot of people think Season 4 Clem would be beaten by Season 2 Ellie, and if it had to do with like head-on strength, you guys can't sneak or nothing, then yeah, then duh, like, because they have their own different ways of fighting. Sneaking and stealth were a factor. I feel like it could be either or's game, not giving it automatically to Clem, because you never know, but it can be anyone's game at that point. To me, it could be equal. Let's do this in order, okay? Based on youngness and strength, I think Season 1 Ellie could beat Season 1 Clem. Alright? Stay with me. And then so Season 2 Clem and Season 3 Clem could beat Season 1 Ellie. And then Season 4 Clem and Season 2 Ellie are equal, depending on if stealth is a factor. If stealth and not head-on-head combat, then I think that they would be equal. My understanding of it. Who would actually win when it comes to, yes, overall more skills and points when going head to head and surviving? Then Ellie wins by 8 points. These points are tallied based on whether or not they can use these skills to fight each other, but I'm kind of writing these points to be like, okay, what tactics do they have that they can use against each other? And I feel like just based on situations, like for example with Ellie being in such a deadlier world, I feel like she just has a step up when it comes to combat, because she has to face a lot more than Clem does. So if that's the case, if she knows how to fight better because of her situation, then she's obviously gonna she's obviously gonna win in a fight with Clem. But again, it really depends on which version of which is strongest. Realistically, in a straight fight, obviously Ellie would win on basically pure physical strength. But with Clem, so she basically is a lot of competition, it feels like. I feel like she would not be, a lot of people when arguing this argument, a lot of people think that Clementine wouldn't be like like Ellie would beat her no problem, no worries, no issues. And I really don't feel like that's the case. I might agree with Ellie could beat Clementine. You know, I could definitely see that happening. At the same time, why are we acting like Clementine is not if we're talking about her prime, if we're talking about season 3, season 4, her prime, she's a good competitor, bro. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, she will put up a good fight when it comes to Ellie. I'm not trying to be like, oh, Clementine would win or anything like that, but I'm just saying, it just seems to me she does have an upper hand in some things, so that wouldn't make her the worst possible competitor ever. Like, I think she definitely does have a fight when it comes to her versus Ellie. But just talk about like who's better overall to me. The overall, and this is based on my popular belief and also fans' popular belief, Clementine is better overall, just because she excels in a number of things. When we're talking about, not just, let's just minus the Clementine versus Ellie fighting, right? Let's just like cut out the versus each other. Let's compare them both characters as in surviving in the apocalypse. I saw online that a lot of people would agree that Clementine is for long-term survival, and based on, you know, the situations that Ellie had to deal with, she is really just based on short-term survival. A lot of her decisions and the way she got to where she was, you know, she's a really good character, very complex, but she is overall a really good, you know, survivalist. But when it comes to her decisions, they just seem a little sloppy, and it's no fault of her own. I think the environment that she's in just makes it so that she has to think about the short term. She has to think about the now. Like, now what are we doing? Now what is the move? Now, like, when can we relax and like have a plan, but let's figure out like what we're doing now. And yeah, that's why she was all now about wanting to get revenge on Abby, because she saw that as the only way of moving forward. Whereas with Clementine, I don't think, you know, she's never had that vengeance about her, not focus on the future. With Clementine, she always made sure to focus on, you know, the long term of how long are we gonna stay here, you know, what's life gonna look like in the next few weeks. We're wanting to make a plan of basically creating a community in the school was a very like heavy long-term decision, but she's looking at it like she wants to have somewhere for AJ to be raised and for life to, you know, be better for the future. So, you know, she also knew that she had to protect that school to be able to stay there long term. You know, she wasn't trying to protect the school just to save the kids and leave. She would have just been like, oh, okay, well, you know, I know somewhere else or something. Let's leave with the kids, and, you know, screw the people trying to recruit y'all. Like, let's just leave. No, she was like, well, since we have nowhere else to go, and this seems like the only safe place in the world right now, let's keep it safe, let's protect it so that we can stay here long term. And I just feel like the difference between her and Ellie just doesn't have that way of thinking because of her situations. She's always had to just think of, you know, the now and what's happening in the present, and, you know, the short term goal. Whereas, like, yeah, she's talking about it in the future, I guess, but she still has a short-term goal. It's not a long-term goal. If Ellie truly thought of long-term goals, she would have stayed with Dina and really realize that the life she could have had would have been, you know, a perfect long-term goal. You're safe, you have a family, you have running water, a working house, you know, but because of her decisions and that type of thing, with what most complex characters have is self-sabotage. You know, they just have this way of like, man, I need to make things right. So even if it's not in anyone's best interest, because her going to find Abby wasn't in anyone's best interest. I mean, she lost fingers over it. Like, there was no good outcome of that ever, other than her learning to like break the cycle, and that's all fine and all, but at the same time, like, you still made that decision. Like, we could have been peaceful on the farm with our kid, like, you know what I mean? So actually vengeful. With Ellie, she's not necessarily bad, she's just a very tragic, complex, and powerful character. She's just not as popular. But with Clementine, she is basically just a complete journey based on leadership and kindness, which just makes her liked overall. Not only just, you know, in fandoms, but in their actual universes. Compared to how we left off on both games, Clementine is well liked by her peers, and Ellie is basically all alone, and, you know, does have to do with story and situational things. But yeah, when it comes to both Clem and Ellie, Clem is more of a long-term apocalypse character if we minus Ellie's immunity as a whole. But the key takeaway is that Ellie is better at fighting through the apocalypse, and then Clem is better at living it, at surviving it. You know what I mean? Like, fighting your way through can only last for so long, which is why I'm curious on what they're possibly going to do for The Last of Us 3. Now, opinions can definitely change, I guess, if The Last of Us 3 came out, but at the same time, Clem's story is done, and I feel like if we leave her at the age that she's at, which is like 16, I think, so the age difference is already just kind of crazy. So them fighting each other kind of should just get thrown out the water. I really need to see what has changed and what Ellie has learned from this point on. That's what I want to see in the third one. She couldn't have done all that, if there is going to be a 3, I don't know, but she couldn't have done all that to not end up killing Abby, to not learn anything from that. Like, if you're gonna waste your time and not do the plan that you started with, at least take away something from that, and not have the same mistakes in the next one. Like, I'm gonna be so mad if she does the same shit in the next one. Like, that just wouldn't make sense to me. This would have been a different conversation though if Ellie stayed with Dina though. Like, based on like characteristics and stuff, this would have been different if Ellie either killed Abby or stayed with Dina, which is why I really wanted it to be a decision-based thing. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think though. I think I'm going to wrap this up. Let me know if I sounded crazy in this. I kind of tried to do my research and kind of give my opinions on it after a while. Mind you, take this with a grain of salt, because I haven't played those games in a while. I replayed them in like 2024 or something, so I'm kind of going based off of memory, and I've played the Walking Dead at least so much that I know for a fact I'm more sure about Clementine than I am about Ellie. So if there's any mistakes that I made, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm not saying this is canon. This is just my opinion and me talking about it. So if you like this video, like it. If you don't, that is fine, don't. Thank you guys so much for watching this squeaky chair. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.